The alarms tore through my chamber before I even opened my eyes. Red light bathed the walls, and the floor trembled under a distant impact. I was on my feet before I understood why, my hand already closing around the small piece of human metal I wore on a chain around my neck. 20 years of quiet nights, and tonight, of all nights, the sky itself seemed to be shaking apart. I am Veltania, ruler of this border colony, daughter of a line that has never once waited for anything. My people move forward. We do not look back. That is what I was taught before I could walk, and it is the one lesson I have failed to learn. My guard captain, a steady man named Colin, burst through my door with his weapon already drawn. His face was pale under the emergency lighting. "Princess, a ship has entered the outer ring. It ignored every warning signal. It is heading straight for the palace platform." My chest tightened, not from fear of an attack, though that fear was real enough. It tightened because of the ship's signature flashing on the wall screen behind him. An old registry code. A human code, 7 letters I had memorized so many years ago that they lived under my skin like a second heartbeat. "Do not fire on it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Let it land." Colin hesitated, torn between his duty and my order, but he obeyed. We ran together through the corridors, past startled staff and half-dressed guards, down to the landing platform where cold night air struck my face like a slap of memory. 20 years ago, in a different battle, in a different dark, a small human ship had cut through wreckage to save my life. Tonight, a ship built from the same rough lines was dropping out of the clouds, trailing fire and smoke, one engine clearly failing. "It is not landing," Colin shouted over the wind. "It is falling." He was right. The ship screamed downward at an angle no pilot would choose on purpose. Sparks poured from its underside. My heart slammed against my ribs as I watched it clip the edge of the outer tower, spin once, and crash hard onto the platform in a shower of metal and light. I did not think. I ran toward it. Colin grabbed my arm, shouting that it could explode, that I was not permitted to risk myself this way, that my chancellor would have his head if anything happened to me. I pulled free of his grip with a strength I did not know I still had. The hatch of the ship groaned, stuck, then finally tore open under someone's force from the inside. Smoke rolled out first, then a man stumbled through it, coughing, blood on his temple, one arm hanging wrong at his side. Even through the haze, even after 20 years, I knew him instantly. The same too-open face, the same stubborn set of his jaw. Older now, lines carved deep by time and distance, but unmistakably him. Marcus. He collapsed before he reached the edge of the platform, and I was there to catch him, my knees hitting the metal hard enough to bruise. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then found my face. "Vel," he whispered, as if my name alone cost him more strength than the crash had. "You have to listen to me. They are coming, right behind me." Before I could ask who, the sky above us lit up with a second trail of fire, larger and faster than the first. Colin's comm device crackled with panicked voices from the tracking station. A second vessel, unmarked, unregistered, was diving toward the colony at a speed no civilian ship could safely manage. "Get the princess inside," Colin barked to the other guards, hauling Marcus up by his good arm, even as he shouted the order. I refused to let go of Marcus's hand, refused to be pulled toward safety while he bled onto the platform beside me. "They followed my ship through the frontier lanes," Marcus said, forcing the words out between gritted teeth, as 2 guards lifted him. "Raiders. They have been hunting supply convoys along the edge of human space for months. I was carrying data that could shut down their entire operation. They want it back, and they do not care what they destroy to get it." The second ship screamed low over the palace, so close that the wind of its passage knocked 2 guards off their feet. It banked hard, turned, and came back around for another pass, clearly preparing to land troops rather than crash like Marcus's damaged vessel had. "Seal the lower gates," I ordered, my voice finding its old command even with my heart still hammering from fear. "Get every civilian into the shelter corridors. Colin, arm the platform defenses. Princess, those defenses have not been tested in years. Then tonight they will be tested." We moved fast, faster than protocol usually allowed, faster than any drill we had practiced. Marcus, despite his injuries, refused to be carried away like cargo. He limped beside me, one arm draped over a guard's shoulder, insisting through gritted teeth that he still knew how the raiders operated, that he could help us survive the next few minutes, if only someone would listen. "They will send a small strike team first," he said, "to secure a foothold before the main assault. If we can stop that team, we buy time for real reinforcements to notice the distress signal I already sent." "How long until reinforcements arrive?" "Hours, maybe longer, out here at the edge of the frontier." Hours felt like a lifetime, with raiders already screaming down out of the dark. I looked at Colin, and he gave a short, determined nod. We had defended this colony before, against smaller threats, against political disputes that turned violent, but never against something with the raw ferocity Marcus was describing. The raider ship finally touched down at the edge of the platform, its landing rough and hostile rather than careful. Armored figures poured out before the ramp had even fully lowered, weapons raised, moving with brutal efficiency toward the palace entrance. My defenses activated with a groan of old machinery finally waking after years of silence. Energy barriers flickering to life along the platform's edge. "Take cover," Colin shouted, pulling me behind a support column just as the first exchange of fire lit up the night. The barriers held, barely, sparking and straining under the assault. Marcus, despite his wound, pulled a weapon from a fallen guard and steadied himself against the same column, breathing hard. "You should be resting," I told him, my voice cracking despite my effort to sound calm. "You should be inside," he shot back, the ghost of an old smile crossing his tired face even in the middle of chaos. "Neither of us is very good at doing what we should." For one strange heartbeat, in the middle of gunfire and sparking barriers, I laughed. It surprised us both. The raiders pressed harder, and one of our barrier generators failed with a shower of sparks, opening a gap in our defense. Two armored figures rushed through it before Colin's team could react. Marcus moved without hesitation, throwing himself between the intruders and me, firing with the arm that was not injured, forcing them back with a courage that looked more like stubbornness than skill. I refused to simply hide while he fought for me a second time in 20 years. I grabbed a fallen guard's sidearm, my hands remembering training I had not used in decades, and added my aim to his. Together, we held the gap until Colin's reinforcements arrived to seal it again. The battle raged for what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, each one stretched painfully long by fear and adrenaline. Slowly, our defenses adapted, our guards found their rhythm, and the raiders, realizing their surprise advantage was gone, began to fall back toward their ship, rather than risk complete destruction. Then, just as their retreat began, the sky lit up again, this time with a formation of proper fleet vessels descending through the clouds, engines glowing steady and controlled rather than wild with damage. Marcus's distress signal had finally been answered. The raiders, caught between our defenses and the arriving ships, had no choice but to surrender or flee into the dark beyond the colony's reach. Most fled. A few, cornered, surrendered. When the fighting finally stopped, silence fell over the platform so suddenly it felt unnatural, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal and the distant hum of fleet ships settling into landing positions. I realized I was still gripping the sidearm tightly enough to ache. Marcus lowered his own weapon slowly, breathing hard, blood still trickling from the cut on his temple, but alive. Truly alive, standing in front of me after 20 years of waiting, through quiet nights that had never once felt as loud as this one. "You came back," I said quietly, the words feeling too small for everything they carried. "I told you I would," he answered, his voice rough with exhaustion. I did not expect the return to involve quite this much fire. "Neither did I admitted, and found myself smiling, despite the ringing in my ears and the ache in my knees. Colin approached carefully, giving a short bow before speaking. "Princess, the platform is secure. Fleet Command is requesting to speak with the human officer regarding the raiders' operation." Marcus nodded, wincing as the movement pulled at his wound, but he did not move to leave. Instead, he looked at me, 20 years of distance folding down into a single quiet moment between two people who had somehow, against every reasonable expectation, found their way back to each other in the middle of chaos. I have a report to give, he said softly, but it can wait a few minutes longer. My people do not wait, I told him, echoing words I had grown up believing with my whole heart. And yet, he said, the same words he had said to me once before crash. Here you are. And yet, I agreed, here I am. Behind us, the guards began the slow work of clearing the platform, securing the fallen, and preparing the colony for the long night of reports and questions that would surely follow. But for a few more heartbeats, standing amid smoke and starlight and the wreckage of a ship that had carried him home through fire, none of that mattered as much as simply knowing he was here, breathing, alive, and true to a promise made 20 years ago in a very different kind of darkness.